Let's go back to the vultures in India. They're an obligate scavenger. They have operated for thousands of years in situ with people who, and the people, the way they treat their cattle, for example, right? They don't euthanize their cattle if they get sick and they get moribund. They give them a shot. With today's technologies, they give them a shot of a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, an NSAID. It's called diclofenac. Diclofenac is used here in the States in humans. It's an NSAID that's prescribed to humans here. But there, because their cattle are sick or something like that, because of their reverence and the way that cattle are to them and their culture and society and their religion, they want to ease their pain. So they give them an NSAID. Isn't that a wonderful adaptation of an old relationship with their reverence for a species like cattle? But they give it this NSAID. The cow dies. Just as it has been for 1,000 years, the carcass goes to the tanner. The tanner pulls the hide.
Now the cow doesn't die from
not
the
from
shot.
the NSAID. No.
Okay, but just somewhere along the life cycle, they get a shot of steroids to help them get better faster.
A non-steroidal anti-inflammatory.
Okay, great. And then at some point in the future, the animal dies.
Right.
It goes to the tanner.
It goes to the tanner. The tanner pulls the hide, which has been done for thousands of years. They use leather, right? They do use the products there. And then the remainder of the carcass goes out to a carcass dump. I mean, no different than any ranches around here. You have a boneyard, right? You don't want those animals out on the landscape. You want them in a place where you can dispose of them. Sometimes you cover them up. Sometimes the scavengers just come in and clean them up.
Right.
So the role is scavengers clean up, right? We have studies, not to digress and get off topic, but we have studies showing the value of scavengers on cleaning up carcasses in the landscape in Africa. Phenomenal studies, but I don't want to get sidetracked on that. So
same thing with fungi and whatnot in woods, right?
Yeah.
And on carcasses. But like essentially, if we didn't have things that broke down logs and fallen trees over hundreds and thousands of years, our forests would just be, they would be overrun by logs.
And you wouldn't have the nutrients that are from the breakdown of that.
That's
so
right.
back to the Indian vulture crisis is what it was later dubbed. So that carcass would go there, and then the vultures would come in. These vultures would be in communities of 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 birds in a vulture colony. And they come down and feed on these carcasses. Now, mind you, vultures can withstand things like anthrax, botulism. They are specially built to be able to withstand what happens when you feed on the carrion in the landscape. But they also clean it up. So they're able to process that stuff. It's phenomenal, right?
They can dissolve whole bones, right? Like they can
some of them, yeah, exactly. And there are some vultures that are bone specialists. They fly up with them, the lammergeiers. They fly up with bones and drop them and break them and eat the bones because they can digest the bones. So they have really acidic gastrointestinal systems, so they can process bone. So now these vultures come down, these 10,000 10,000 vulture colonies come in, 10,000 vultures from a colony fly in and they consume these carcasses. Now it has the residue of this NSAID in there, this diclofenac. Those birds die within 72 hours. So you had breeding colonies there that were 10,000 birds strong one year and 0 the next. So what happens as a result of that is you end up having a huge increase in carrion, these carcasses on the landscape. What are the other scavenging species that feed on those? Feral dogs. So the feral dog population skyrocketed. What happens with feral dog populations? They're known to carry rabies. So the rabies cases increased to such a level that it became a pandemic on the landscape of problem with rabies, right? Now, here's an economic impact that you can link. And the government there spent $1 billion a year for like 4 years in increased rabies cases. And what are we going to do about this carrion on the landscape? Because the vultures died because they couldn't process diclofenac. It would give them visceral gout and they would die as little as 72 hours from ingesting the meat that had metabolized diclofenac in the meat. So we're not just talking about a potential contaminant somewhere on the carcass. We're talking about the meat that had this diclofenac in it. They would consume it and die 72 hours later. Now, all the way through to the increasing population of feral dogs, the increasing cases of bites and rabies in humans. Now you have something that affects us as humans directly. That could have been avoided had we known what the cause of this die-off was. Well, we at the Peregrine Fund and some of our researchers, the late Dr. Lindsay Oakes, he was the one who was able to identify what the problem was. So in a normal manner, say a conservation organization or a scientific organization where you just do science. You would have said, oh, we figured out what the problem is. Great. Now hopefully somebody will do something with it. That's the difference between the rest of the world and the Peregrine Fund. We figured out what it was. We worked with other pharmaceutical companies to test other products that would still have the same benefits and value to the people of India who want to ease the pain of their dying cattle. Found other products that worked, that didn't have the deleterious effects on vultures, brought that in, and they started using that. Now the vulture populations are stabilized, some are even increasing, but we found out what the problem was through the study of one particular type of bird, the vultures there.